recorded for podcasts by Ben Shimolevsky at BC Web Design, and Roger Rail also records it for live streaming Ustream, right? So a lot of the old talks are all archived there. If you go to the archived events on the LA2M.org website, you can watch them if you missed them. So that's a nice way to spend an afternoon if you have nothing better to do. So we are a nonprofit, or actually we haven't been approved for nonprofit status yet, but we have applied for nonprofit status yet, and we are working towards that aim. So we are a marketing education organization, and that's why we have meetings every week, which are essentially free. If you want to eat lunch, it's $10. That includes tip, drink, and your lunch. And we also pass the hat. Stacy Collick of Dollar Bill is our, not secretary, she's our treasurer. Stacy passes the hat. It's a suggested $3 donation. You don't have to donate, but that money does go into the LA2M account, and we're working to do good in the community. So, and we will give reports if we make any disbursements. Nobody gets paid for this. This is all volunteer. This money covers our email marketing. It covers any expenses, but that money is accumulating. I don't even know how much we have in there, Stacy. Do you know offhand?
No.
Okay. I got the statement. I got to look at it. Yeah.
Actually, I do.
But anyways, and okay. And if you don't know Dee Davies, she's up here too. She's the voice of LA2M. You probably all know her. Yeah, she's wonderful. She does the ending of LA2M. Okay. Without further ado, we have our speaker. I don't want to bore you with my stuff. Mike Kessler's our speaker. He runs an organization which is very cool. It's called the Workantile Exchange, and it's right down the street on Main Street, and it's basically a co-working environment, which is wonderful. People come there, and I think it's $100 a month to join the club, and you can go there and work, and there's mighty good coffees out front, so you get good coffee, and there's a really nice community of people there, a lot of really smart people, and they're actually offering private offices as well upstairs, which is very nice. A nice view, nice desk. So that's what Mike does, and he's going to talk about an interesting topic today: decision making in the face of randomness. So please give Mike Kessler a warm round of applause.
Thank you. So, is this working well? Okay. So, in 2002, the Nobel Prize Committee awarded, what am I hitting here? They awarded the Nobel Prize for economics not to an economist, but to a psychologist named Daniel Kahneman. And Kahneman, along with Amos Tversky, they studied the misconceptions and common fallacies that people have when they go to make a decision or make a judgment, and the effect that these misconceptions have on the judgments they make. So with that, a new field called behavioral economics has been launched, and now the bookshelves at the bookstores are heavy with these behavioral economics books. Many of you probably either heard of or read the Ann Arbor one, Predictably Irrational, how we act in a rational manner, but in a predictable fashion. This is basically the same book, but the science of fear, how we fear things we shouldn't and don't fear things that we should. As far as randomness, we have a couple of those. There's Drunkard's Walk, about how often we attribute skill or our fortitude when it's actually a very lucky occurrence, which you should take, but it's more often than not luck. And along those lines, the black swans, I mean, they read, were highly improbable events can have a disproportionate effect on outcomes. So there's a few more, and I told Dee I'd provide like a little, what each of those books says, and you guys could pick and choose what you think would be good for you. So if it's possible to distill like all this, what they say in these books and what a life's work of a Nobel Prize winner in economics down into one statement, I guess it's that as humans, we're not very good decision makers as individuals. So even the smartest one of us, we make bad decisions. Did anybody buy a house in 2006 or 2007? We don't always do the rational things. And we've, through evolution, we've established these rules of thumbs, these heuristics that guide our behavior. And it's worked well when we're chasing the antelope, you stick with it. Now today, in a more complex world, it doesn't always work well. It still does work well in certain situations. So when it does work well is in a stable environment when cause and effect are obvious. So Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Blink, which many of you have probably read, and that's what he's explaining there. Like, you can go on your intuition in a stable environment and have very good results. Example of this is chess. Chess experts know the chessboard, know the game so well that they can walk by and look at a game in progress, know who has the advantage, knows what's going on in the game, can probably even work backwards and forwards as to what the next plays will be. But if you no longer keep that environment stable, if you change the number of squares on the chessboard each time they play, or make the pieces of the board move differently every time, when you change it to an unstable environment, they no longer have an advantage like that and cannot rely on their intuition. So in our modern world, which is more complex and not stable, our decision making that we use to get through the stable environment can often lead us astray. So this intuitive thinking, this going by gut, going by feeling, is called System 1. And so that's you're led by emotion. It's quick, it's easy, it's served us well most of the time, but it also can lead us very astray. So the other means of thinking or problem solving are System 2 situations. That's, you slow down, you think logically. You look at the facts and the data and you try to filter out the emotion. And it's a more effortful process. It's harder. It takes more time. It's not as easy. So our brain doesn't like to do it all the time. What our brain likes to do, and what it remembers most easily by setting up these, and how we arrive at these rules of thumb, our brain remembers most easily things that are interesting, things that are emotionally arousing, and things that are recently acquired. So as marketers, you should be excited that we don't make decisions very well, because you can manipulate that to your advantage by addressing these things, but there's a double-edged sword in that you also are subject as a thinker and decision maker to these same cognitive biases. So that's where you can get yourself in trouble. To introduce some of the cognitive biases and some of these heuristics that we shortcut to as rules of thumb, I just read recently that, because we're here at the restaurant, they have anchoring as one of them. So there's companies now who specialize in menus, and they do it to maximize and optimize the sales by way of the menus at a restaurant. One of the things they do is anchoring. They'll put a very expensive item that people are unlikely to buy that's very prominent, and that anchors like how much you're going to spend at this restaurant, and then it doesn't seem as bad when you end up spending $15 for a hamburger. Another one is the confirmation bias. We seek to confirm what we already feel or know, because it's harder to look for new information or information that contradicts what we want to do. And just the ease of it, we seek out information, like I said, that confirms what we already know. And then there's also another one called loss aversion. So if you are hunting that antelope and you're on your second day of it, it's probably your advantage to stay with it and go after that antelope, because you need to eat. And food is going to keep you alive, so that's the good thing. Nowadays, we're a decade into a war. There's no clear metric of whether we're going to win or not, but that same emotional we're in, we shouldn't get out type of judgment is ruling our decision making for better or for worse. I'm going to introduce you to one more. I'll even tell you what it is beforehand, because one of the interesting things about some of these heuristics and some of these cognitive biases, even when you're aware of them, even when you feel yourself falling for them, you still do it. So this one's called availability heuristic. So just take a second, and if you rank in order out of these categories of tobacco, lifestyle, motor vehicle accidents, firearms, illicit drug use, which is most likely to kill you, which is least likely? How do more people die? Did anybody see actually that, what's that British chef on TED? Jamie Oliver? Is that Jamie Oliver. Anyway, check out his TED Talk. It has nothing to do with this, except he uses this graph, which is very interesting. So, with the availability heuristic, these are the leading causes of death. And I think tobacco and lifestyle may have flip-flopped, and this is from 2004, since then. But with the availability heuristic, and I'm going to read it here so I don't get it wrong, people base their judgment of how frequently an event will occur based on how easily they can bring an example to their head. So you don't have a ready example of, the news doesn't lead every day with 100 million Americans make poor lifestyle choices, eat bad food, and remain inactive. But they do lead every day with, horrific car wreck, shootings, movie star overdoses. So those are readily available, and your brain jumps to those because that's what's easy. So even if you get the order of these correct, the magnitude we're way off on. Every time I do this, I'm always surprised, like, wow, we worry about things that we shouldn't worry about, and not the other way around. So this availability heuristic brings us back to what's most interesting, what's most emotionally arousing, what's most recently acquired. The brain prefers a vivid and compelling story. It wants to make that shortcut. It wants to do things the easy way. So a good story will always trump solid facts, because facts are boring. And it takes effort, and it takes thought. So the brain wants a narrative. So these cognitive biases, like I said, as a marketer, knowing that you can manipulate the narrative, that's exciting. You can control the message that goes out, and you very well should, but it works two ways. This company has been in the news lately, and they have marketing problems. So, your high school senior is going to most likely be studying this when she's in college in a few years as a case study of how Toyota is working on this marketing problem they have right now. So with your system one, with your gut, initially when you see Toyota flash up there, what do you feel? What's evoked? It's not the cars are safe anymore. It's not that the cars are good value anymore. It's their danger, the accelerator's thick. Toyota lost control. They let the narrative get away from them. They threw a narrative out there, but it sucked. They gave us a horrible narrative. They said it's driver's error. Nobody wants to hear that they're not good at something. That's not a good narrative to sell. They said that floor mats were sticking and causing the accelerator to stay down, which intuitively makes no sense to anybody. The competing narrative, I don't know if you guys have heard this or read about it, but there's a 911 call of a passenger in a panic in a car careening down the highway with a stuck accelerator, and it ends tragically in a in a horrible crash and 4 people died. Now that's, one of those 2 narratives is going to sell a lot better than the other one. Toyota did not offer a good one to begin with. Now they're oh, this car didn't have floor mats in it either. So now that's how Toyota has to deal with that narrative being the prevalent narrative out there. They lost control of it. And once again, which of those narratives is more interesting, more emotionally arousing? And Toyota probably wishes they weren't so recently acquired. You can acquire it every couple of minutes if you look at the news. Let's slow down and go back to system 2, which are the numbers, the logic, thinking about it, figuring out what's happening and what's going on. I mean, without even knowing what the exact numbers are, if you just slow down and think about it, my family, we have a Toyota Corolla or Camry, I don't know the difference, but you know, our kids are in it, we drive it every day, and I'm not fearful about it. Because when you think about it, the car, it's a good car. It's a safe car. Overall, the quality's very good. They've been good for a long time. So that introduces us to another bias, and it's called the insensitivity to base rates. It's similar to the availability heuristic. So as individuals, we're really horrible at assessing the likelihood that an event will occur. And if there's a good story that goes with it, we're atrocious at it. So everybody knows the accelerators on Toyotas are sticky. Does anybody know the likelihood or how many deaths have occurred from this? Is anybody able to recall that at all? Just how scared you get somebody knows?
It was 39 yesterday, and today they've increased it to 54. I'm a numbers person. I remember every number.
Well, there you go. When I checked last time, it was 19, but I have this suspicion that the increased sensitivity in
It
this
was like
recent...
3 or 4 days ago. It's already been going up each day.
Well, I'm sure it is, because now this information is recently acquired, top of mind, and emotionally arousing. So we're going to skew to the high end in the noise as opposed to, but 34, 39, 54, whatever you said. What I had is 19, but they did it over 10 years. So whatever that number is, there's 2.3 million cars being recalled to do this, to fix the accelerator. We're not good at figuring out, well, here's another thing. 2 trillion miles are driven every year. Like, I can't comprehend that number. It doesn't make sense to me. 54 makes sense. When you start dividing 2 trillion into 54, it's a small percent. Your likelihood of driving a Toyota every day all over the place, of having the accelerator stick and you dying, is statistically close to 0, even at these increasing numbers that are coming up. And the other interesting thing is, for every 100 million miles in the U.S. that are driven, on average, there's 1.6 deaths on the road due to that. So I took this a little further and I made some assumptions, and you're going to have to go with me here because I made the assumptions and I'm talking so I get to choose. I'm going to assume that all 2.3 million Toyota drivers decide to return their car to the service center to get the accelerator fixed. I'm also making the assumption that, you know, driving there, getting the ride back, wait till the next day, going back, picking it up. So it's a round trip twice, averages out to 80 miles. So these 2.3 million people going to the dealership and driving back expose them to enough road miles that you can expect 2 to 3 people statistically to die in an auto wreck taking care of the stuck accelerator problem. So from a straight system 2 numbers logic point of view, like the rational thing for Toyota to do would be to say, yeah, we know next time you come in for regular service, we'll take care of it. But when they lost control of the narrative, they can't do that anymore. They have to sell a better narrative. And I think I saw it today or yesterday, to their credit, they're not a dumb company. They're doing a very good job. They're changing the design so if you step on the brake, it disengages the accelerator completely. That's a good narrative. They can sell that, and that I think will help them go a long way. But they're still going to be digging out for a while on this. So this is a way, as a seller, as a marketer, you want to control the narrative. And if you have one day left where you're going to work on your product, and it's either going to work better and be a better product, a new feature, or